Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan. I hope you're doing well today. I have like a weird cough thing coming through again. I guess it's the allergies. I also want to tell you too, for some reasons later on in the day, apparently when the sun goes down, it's way brighter out there than I thought it would be where I'm recording currently. I usually record earlier in the day, like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Not today. This is later in the evening on Sunday, of course. And I hope you had a good weekend. As you watch this, I've had a great weekend. It's been really nice and relaxing. My wife and I have just enjoyed each other's company and just hanging out and stuff. And anyway, I have a Give Yourself Goosebumps book that I kind of teased. I was going to review a Give Yourself Goosebumps book this weekend at some point, hopefully. And I finally had some time to sit down and read it. In the midst of watching a lot of Filthy Frank videos, I'm one of my favorite YouTubers of all time, and in the midst of that in church time this morning, yeah, that's kind of a complete opposite of each other, but still, had a lot of time today to just sit down and relax before we go to the store to get some groceries, and my wife and I basically were talking about this book a little bit earlier. This is a weird one, a really weird one. Like, I really enjoy it for the most part. It's a really fun, adventurous type of book, not like super adventurous, like a country to country traveling type of Goosebumps book. Not like one of the earlier Mummy books, you know what I mean? Like some of the earlier Mummy books, like you were leaving the country and going to Egypt and stuff, and had a lot of mummy Egyptian type of stuff in that book. It's not so much like that. This is kind of a weirder book that might be better to read during like September or October, around the fall time of the year. I really enjoyed this, and I was never really excited to read this book. I've had a lot of people recommend it to me over time, and I enjoyed it tremendously, surprisingly, more than I thought I was going to. That doesn't mean it's great, that doesn't mean it's just solid or really good, doesn't mean any of that. It's a good book, I really enjoyed it, I just didn't love this book. That is, finally getting to the point, Give Yourself Goosebumps number 3, Trapped in Batwing Hall. I don't know how that sun coming down out there is going to make this holographic cover look. It's kind of cool how the light shines off of that. Anyway, this is a really solid book. I always thought the cover was a little odd, just this picture of this bat here. You know, come on, you can do better than that. So basically, the way this book starts off, I was surprised to see this be more of a, mostly, since these books typically get divided up into two different sections to tell you two completely different types of stories. They kind of meet in the middle at the beginning, and then you have a path, kind of fork on the road that makes you divide up where you're going. I would say about 75% of this book is mostly dedicated to the first storyline you can take a path to, about a kind of jump scare house scavenger hunt type thing, but we'll get there as I tell you the story a little bit. Of course, these books are written in first person to make the reader really get into them as a choose-your-own-adventure book. That means basically, in case you don't know what this book is, or you don't know what a Give Yourself Goosebumps book is, you'll read a book, or you'll read through the book, excuse me, you get to the bottom of a page and it'll say, go to page such and such, or page such and such, depending on which choice you want to make. Of course, I always read the whole book. I use a bunch of bookmarks to work my way through all the books and get through all the endings. There's about 20 endings in here from what I understand on the cover of the book. So, today is Friday, according to the storyline, and you happen to be walking home, and you've just recently moved into this new town. It's not really a kind of backwoods story like The Barking Ghost or anything like that. It's not like you went from the city into the woods or forest or anything for your new neighborhood. You kind of just moved into a new place, and for whatever reason, this is the Friday of the first week you've been in school, I assume elementary school, and for whatever reason, nobody wants to be your friend. Not a single person's reached out to be your friend. And as you're walking, a kid named Nick kind of just shows up and starts talking to you, and it turns out you guys like a lot of the same stuff. Spider-Man comics, some other cool things. And Nick tells you one of his favorite things are scary stories, and of course you happen to like those as well as the main character of the story. If you're reading Goosebumps, you probably do anyway. You're probably a Twilight Zone fan too, more than likely. At least classic, not Jordan Peele Twilight Zone. Never Jordan Peele Twilight Zone. Anyway, that stuff's terrible. So basically, you and Nick decide to meet up after he tells you that on Friday nights he meets with a group called the Horror Group. I guess is what he calls it, something like that. I don't remember. It's basically Are You Afraid of the Dark? A bunch of kids meet up and tell scary stories in a spooky place. This particular fellow, Nick, and his group decide to meet in a place called Batwing Hall. B-A-T Wing Hall. Like the cover, Trapped in Batwing Hall. And essentially, Batwing Hall is apparently a house in the neighborhood that's just old and decrepit and ugly and just worn down, deserted. So people assume that since it's abandoned, it's probably haunted. And the kids meet inside of this house with a candle and stuff to tell each other scary stories. So you decide to meet up with Nick and his friends that night too. And when you go to do that, it turns out tonight is not scary story night. Tonight is let's play scary games. And I assumed it would be kind of like There was one particular book, I don't remember what it was. I think it was a Give Yourself Goosebumps book. There was also the first of the Ghost of Fear Street books that Stein was listed as the writer, but it really wasn't. It was always another writer, kind of doing ghost writing. You can tell that on the inside of the cover of those books. Basically, the first of that series is called Hide and Shriek, I believe. I think it was book number 1 of Ghost of Fear Street. I figured you'd have kind of like a hide and seek game, you know, and it didn't have that in here. Wow, it's kind of chilling now. The sun's getting a little bit lower. That helps. You can kind of see the coloring change and it gets a little bit less bright. That's a very good thing because I felt like I couldn't see, you know. Anyway, so basically, as the story goes on that night with the game night, you have 2 different options here. You can join the red team and you're basically going to play games inside of the house, scary games on top of that. It turns out to be a scavenger hunt where you have to find 4 different things within the house, like a real human bone, a piece of broom, whatever it is, whatever the thing is broom is made of. Not the stick, but the other stuff from a witch's broom, and a couple other things that are kind of creepy and weird. Again, fits very well in that good Halloween time, September, fall time feeling if you like that kind of thing. I really enjoyed that story a lot more than the second path of the story. Now, if you join the blue team, you're kind of just doing a game called like The Hunt or something like that. And apparently it's also just kind of like you guys telling each other, or you're trying to find, excuse me, the scariest thing outside. And like I said, the inside team is the red team. You play games on the inside of the house. The blue team is the outside of the house. Oddly enough, the story doesn't go the way you think it will if you join the blue team and go outside. It's not like somebody hunting you in the woods, which I think would have been a lot better than what we actually got. The cover, I was wondering when I read the first storyline, the red team on the inside of the house storyline, there wasn't really any references to bats. I mean, you were in Batwing Hall, the house, the abandoned house, but I was like, you know, what's the deal with the cover and bats, aside from the title being Trapped in Batwing Hall? What's the point of this? The second story explains all that, and I'm going to get a little bit into that, of course, spoiler-free. I don't really talk about spoilers on my channel, try to keep it as, you know, friendly as I can to you. Now, of course, you're searching for the scariest item outside of the house on the blue team storyline to scare your friends, and whoever gets the scariest item wins. You literally don't get to see anything anybody else picks up. At some point they tell you, since you're the new kid, you have to go out to the cemetery by yourself and go find something out there to scare people with. And you happen to find a place. Now, mind you, the person who used to own the house and property was named Professor Krupnik. It starts with a K. Krupnik. Weird name. Real weird name. Feels like a Vincent Price character. Like if he was alive and this was a movie, he would have played that character. Even if it was a Goosebumps Kids type thing, Vincent Price would have been a Goosebumps guy if he was still alive. Anyway, so Professor Krupnik has like a tomb out there in the cemetery as well. And apparently, when you go out there and you mess with one of the doors, it has a curse on that door that says whoever messes with this door is gonna, you know, grow bat bones or something. And you're like, okay, you know, okay, Mr. Poe. So basically, you get cursed, and this storyline's different. Again, the red team storyline, you're inside of the house the whole night long. You have a lot of different endings focused on that storyline. This story, you have that curse put on you, and then it, like, you go to the next day, basically. Almost immediately. You don't even find out anything else anybody else did. It's not like you play the rest of the game and then go home for the night, then the curse is on you and you start turning into a bat. Yeah, that's right. You start turning into a bat for the second storyline. Most of that story for the second half of the book, which is really like 25% of the book, is dedicated to you being a bat and struggling with going out in the daylight and having to not do that, sneaking out at nighttime, but you turn into a bat, so your travel's a little bit slower, but you're learning to fly, and all kinds of crazy, weird stuff like that. So again, slightly adventurous, kind of the cool Goosebumps adventurous, if you will. And it was a fun read. Both storylines were really fun. The first one didn't really have any scary factor to it, but it was still fun and eerie at times. I enjoyed that. It was very atmospheric. The second storyline, the blue team storyline with you turning into a bat, is it as enjoyable as the red team storyline? Absolutely not. It's really, to me, it doesn't come close. It's kind of just a filler thing. This whole book, to me, feels like a filler compared to most things that you get from Give Yourself Goosebumps. And I don't say that often. I don't really have a negative view to this book. I don't really have a negative view to many Give Yourself Goosebumps books. There's maybe a handful that I'm kind of like, oh, that's pretty rough. Not bad, but rough. Some have grown on me more, like Into the Jaws of Doom. The more I've thought about it over time, the more I'm like, yeah, it's a little bit messy the way it's designed and formatted as a special edition #1 when they first tried to experiment with doing special editions, but for the Goosebumps brand for that series. But it kind of grew on me over time because of things like The Visible Man in that story. If you've read that book and you know about The Visible Man, he's terrifying. One of my favorite Goosebumps villains. With this story and this book, there's not really any main villains. You know, and there kind of is with the red team storyline inside of the house and the scavenger hunt you go through. You're kind of stuck by yourself, even though you have friends in the house you just met. But it's overall a solid read. I enjoyed the book. I had a good time. I'm really glad I had a couple of days to just relax. We've been so busy every weekend nonstop. Next weekend's a wedding weekend for somebody else that we have friends that we're friends with. It's been a really busy time. It's going to keep being busy here soon. Of course, Mother's Day is next weekend as well. So, you know, hug your mothers. And it's going to be busy. It's been busy. I'm glad I had this weekend with my wife to just sit down and relax and read some stuff. I'm also going to try to get a couple of videos on my other channel too. Not Strange Michael, but the Universal Monster channel I'm kind of working on a little bit here and there. It's been like 3 weeks since I uploaded there, so I wanted to do a couple of videos tonight for that too. So I'm trying to scatter myself out a little bit, get some stuff done. Now the bright sun's back, and it's hurting. It's hurting, seriously. So anyway, overall with this book, I had a good time. I recommend it. It's not my favorite. It's really not my favorite. It's not one of my big recommendations for Give Yourself Goosebumps at all, or Goosebumps for that matter. It's not going to rank very high one day when that every Goosebumps book ranked video possibly comes out, if I live long enough or whatever. If that happens, this book will not be super high on the list, just because, you know, it's going to be very mid-tier, you know? Which is not a bad thing. When it comes to Goosebumps, the consistency is typically there. I typically enjoy almost everything I read from Goosebumps and from R.L. Stine. And the brand itself is still alive to this day. Excuse me, I bit my tongue a little bit. That hurt. It's still alive to this day with Slappy World. And I think Goosebumps is still doing pretty solid, you know, when it comes to the fans that are still there, the community that's still there, the community here on my channel that we still have. People are still enjoying this and finding fun within it. And the books like this still hold that and still work with that. They still have its fans. I think a lot of people recommend this to me because they enjoy it a lot more than me, but I've read a lot better Give Yourself Goosebumps books. I've read a lot better Goosebumps books in general. So overall, when it comes to Trapped in Batwing Hall, is this a bad book? Again, absolutely not. It was a really fun read. I had a good time reading it. I didn't regret reading it. I did get a little bored a couple of times, which is very not frequent, not common at all with Give Yourself Goosebumps books. That happens with the regular books. With the Choose Your Own Adventure Give Yourself Goosebumps books, that's not a very common thing for me personally. So that was a little weird. I was a little surprised to feel that way at a couple of points. I just feel like, again, the mixture of the two stories, the one on the inside of the house with the scavenger hunt and the one on the outside, they don't even come close to the same type of quality. They kind of I've had a few books from GYG that have been like this, but not to this case, in my opinion, a lot of the time. And this is one of the ones where I think it's not as strong as I thought it could have been. Just because. Now, when it comes to Trapped in Batwing Hall, excuse me, I keep wanting to just call it Batwing Hall. They never call it Trapped in Batwing Hall. That's not even part of the story, really. I mean, kind of is, kind of, sort of, but still. The cover's a little lame. It's explained with the second half of the book if you read that. But overall, this is not a high recommendation for me, but I do like it. I do like it. I hate to feel like I'm coming across so negative sometimes with some of these books. This is not The Barking Ghost, which I just reviewed the other day. This is not that kind of case where it's just straight out really, really solid, and then it just ruins the book in the last 30 pages. It just completely becomes horrible and changes completely tone and everything else. It just ruins that whole storyline. It's not one of those cases. It just feels like the two different storylines here in this just Choose Your Own Adventure series book here just doesn't mesh well together. It, you know, it kind of feels oddly yoked, like they don't really work, you know? So overall, when it comes to Trapped in Batwing Hall, if I had to rate the book on a 5-star basis, I'd give it about a 3 out of 5 stars. It's really just right there in the middle, really nothing else to really say about it. It's fun, it can be eerie sometimes with the atmosphere to it. Again, I much prefer the scavenger hunt story inside of the house. I think that's a pretty fun story. There's some creepy imagery there that I think would work really well in a kid's film. The second half of the story, no. No. Nobody wants to read a story about a kid turning into a bat and struggling as a bat, especially when it's supposed to be me in the story written in first person. I'm cool. I'm good with that. Anyway, 3 out of 5 stars for me. What did you guys think about Trapped in Batwing Hall? Did you love this book? Did you hate this book? Put your thoughts and comments down below. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this one. I don't know what I'm going to read next. I kind of want to read another GYG book. The other day I was looking at my collection at my house, well, my old house before I lived here with my wife. And I looked through the different books and I was like, wow, I have a lot of GYG that I have not read. There's a lot less of the other series. Even the classic books with 62 books, I have a lot less of those than I do GYG to read. So I might start catching up on these a little bit. These are some of my most enjoyed books that I review here on the channel. I really, really love the Give Yourself Goosebumps series. It's special, it's fun typically. It's a lot more, I feel like the humor's best in this series a lot of the time. And I think the monsters aren't as creative as the original classic series, but they can still be fun, and they can have scarier books and mostly more humorous books, but they all work really well most of the time. This is one of those cases where it doesn't always mesh well, but it's still fun and enjoyable. So, I don't know, I might start catching up on some GYG books here soon. Maybe read another one after this one. I'm not really sure yet, so don't get your panties in a bunch. We'll see. Anyway, I don't want to promise you anything about what I'm going to read next. I'm a little... Again, this week's going to be a little bit busy. Again, it's just one of those times in my life right now. Yeah. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this book? Put your thoughts and comments down below about it and what you think about Give Yourself Goosebumps as an overall series. Do you love them? Do you hate them? Do you like Choose Your Own Adventure books in general? Some of those have tried to come back, like with Midnight Arcade, which was pretty cool. I read one of those and I reviewed it here on the channel. So there's some cool stuff out there I like. And, yeah. I've rambled a lot. Anyway, thank you for watching. God bless you guys. Have a good weekend for the rest of the couple hours you have, I guess, depending on when you're seeing this. God bless you. Goodbye.